Hello, everybody. My name is John Fuller, and I am the author of this children's book called Fly Car. I wrote this book about 10 years ago, and this tells the story and adventures of Eli Martin, an inventor, and his best friend Murph. And before I start, I want to just go ahead and ask you this question. Have you ever had a best friend before? And what are the qualities that you look for in a best friend? So without further ado, I give you Fly Car by John Fuller. Chapter number 1, Busted. Slate gray clouds hovered over the sky like UFOs as Eli made his way down to his buddy's house. He and Earl Murphy had been best friends since second grade. Murph's favorite hobby was trying to find creative ways to get out of school. His latest trick was mixing a little neon green sports drink, oatmeal, and water together until the concoction had just the right consistency, then dumping it into the toilet. He'd wait for that exact moment when the contents began floating to the surface of the commode, when he would start moaning and groaning about not feeling well to his mom. But his secret sickness recipe had recently been discovered by his mom when she found an empty, crumpled up Quaker Oats packet under his bedroom pillow. Eli Martin, with his spiky brown hair, electric blue eyes, and below average height, was quite a contrast to the larger-than-life Murph. Still, the boys had been best friends for as long as they could remember. Every weekday morning for the past 3 years, they made their trek together to Thomas Edison Elementary School. Their primary bond was that they both hated school. Actually, hate was too harsh a word, but strongly dislike would certainly describe their feelings towards school. And here's Murph and Eli making their way to Thomas Edison Elementary. Going through the same routine day after day after day made the underachieving pair feel as if their lives were on a constant rewind cycle. Walking the neighborhood blocks toward Edison Elementary every day gave the boys an opportunity to talk about the day ahead and remind each other why they thought school was dumb. Your attendance has been pretty solid lately, Eli said. Mom discovered my secret sickness recipe, said Murph. I should have been more careful with the oatmeal packets. Murph, the secret sickness recipe isn't exactly top secret. Kids have been pulling that off for years. It was just a matter of time before your mom would catch on to your tricks. Yeah, you're probably right. The road from Murph's house to school took roughly 10 minutes. This was Eli's favorite time of day, as his mind would race through a million different ideas. He'd daydream, then take notes in his head and sock away the best possibilities in his mental file cabinet for the future. Suddenly, the first bell began to ring. Startling Eli like an alarm clock, waking him up from a really good dream. Every morning, the fifth grade routine was the same. Exactly the same. Class attendance, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, morning announcements, and the relentless yammering of the teacher. Sometimes Eli felt like a character trapped inside a Peanuts cartoon, with all the adult voices droning on in the same monotonous tone. Wah, 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 like the trombone in a Peanuts cartoon for 7 straight hours. His current teacher was Mrs. Fitzgerald. Mrs. F was actually very nice and at times interesting, but Eli's mind couldn't help but wander into another world that was more appealing to him than the confining 4 walls of the classroom. This world was one of vivid colors and dimensions, and most of all, inventions. Fantastic machines and gadgets he dreamed up that could be useful in the near future, maybe even change the world for better. Mrs. F's voice closed in on Eli's dream like a trapdoor. Whack! Snapping him back to the reality of the daily fifth grade life. The closing school bell rang. Brrring! 11:20 a.m. The kids quickly stacked their chairs and silently shuffled out of the class. 10 minutes later, Mrs. F was getting ready to meet her students' parents for spring conferences. Eli's mom was the first on the list. Parent-teacher conferences were always the same story for Eli's mom. This year, it was Mrs. Fitzgerald's turn to be the truth teller. But his mom had heard the same script from every one of his teachers. Your son is very bright, creative, and well-liked by his peers, but he just doesn't seem motivated to do well in school. This time, she was ready with the response. Well, why do you think that is, Mrs. Fitzgerald? I just don't know. I was hoping maybe you could tell me about your son's home life. It might help to get a clearer picture. Eli's mom collected herself. Well, as you know, times have been pretty tough around here since the economy headed south and crushed the automobile industry, she said. My husband, Michael Martin, is CEO of Martin Motors. He's putting in some pretty long hours trying to salvage the company that his great-grandfather founded back in 1931. He hasn't been at home too much lately. In fact, Eli's mom didn't really fully understand her own explanation. She had always felt that she should be able to do something more to help her underachieving son, but she had never figured out what. I understand. I really do, said Mrs. Fitzgerald. But Eli is starting to show some pretty significant gaps in his learning, if you know what I mean. He displays tremendous potential, but that needs to be matched with his overall performance. Any suggestions? Eli's mom asked. Well, he may need to attend summer school. Do you have a plan B? Summer school would not change Eli, she knew. It would just be another pointless punishment. Well, let's see how he performs during the final trimester of the year. Before we have to do anything drastic, Mrs. Fitzgerald said. After about 20 minutes, Mrs. Fitzgerald and Eli's mom rose from their seats next to the teacher desk, shook hands, and headed towards the classroom door in the back. Mrs. F ended the meeting with a warm smile and her usual sign-off. Thanks for coming in, and have a relaxing spring break. Eli was waiting for his mom in the school parking lot near the family's luxury black sedan. As she unlocked his car door, he looked at her quizzically, but she said nothing. The ride home was very quiet and until he decided to break the ice. So, how did it go? He asked, feeling a little like an FBI agent interrogating a foreign spy. How did what go? Mom said, pretending not to know what he meant. Come on, Mom, the parent-teacher conferences. What did Mrs. F have to say? Well, she said that you were a bright boy, as Mom cracked a smile from the driver's seat. That all? Eli hung on every word. Well, not exactly. She mentioned creative, well-liked, and honest. Okay. So any bad news? Eli probed. Does lacking personal organization and homework inconsistency ring a bell? That stuff is overrated, Eli replied dismissively, convinced of his own intelligence. Well, that may be, but that stuff could land you in summer school. It can't be that bad, can it? You have one trimester to right the ship. And what if I sink like the Titanic? How does summer school sound? Mom repeated, giving Eli a steely glaze. 2 words. Pure torture. Eli mumbled. Just then, the sedan pulled